These are the airports where a single mistake means there's no second chance. Runways carved into mountainsides, strips of asphalt shorter than an aircraft carrier, and approach paths that thread between peaks nearly as tall as Everest itself. At places like Lukla in Nepal and Paro in Bhutan, a handful of airports push the limits of what aviation was ever designed to do, and every single landing becomes a masterclass in precision. 80% of all commercial airplane accidents happen during takeoff or landing, according to the FAA. At these airports, the margins during those critical moments shrink to almost nothing. Let's start where everyone expects. Lukla, Nepal. Tenzing Hillary Airport, VNLK, sits named after the two men who first conquered Everest. Built by Edmund Hillary himself in the 1960s, using donations through the Himalayan Trust. The runway stretches just 527 meters long, which means most commercial runways are 4 to 5 times that length. But the length isn't even the worst part. The runway has an 11.7% gradient, meaning it's built on a slope, tilted upward into the side of a mountain. You land uphill, then take off downhill toward a cliff that drops straight into the valley below. There's no go-around procedure at Lukla. If a pilot commits to the approach and something goes wrong, the mountain sits right there waiting. Approximately 50 people have died in crashes involving flights to and from this airport since operations began. The last fatal incident struck in April 2019 when a plane collided with a helicopter on the ground. Since then, a separate helipad has been built. Here's what's fascinating. Many aviation professionals in Nepal don't actually consider Lukla the most dangerous airport in the country. Air traffic controller Ujjwal Tiwari points to airports like Talcha and Jupal as being even more challenging. But because the Everest region generates enormous revenue for Nepal, the government doesn't exactly rush to contest the label. The danger becomes, in a strange way, part of the brand. This reputation was cemented when History Channel's Most Extreme Airports ranked it among the world's most dangerous. Around 40,000 tourists pass through Lukla every year, with up to 15 landings per day during peak trekking season. The alternative to flying? Walking 7 to 10 days from the nearest road. Now let's go somewhere that makes Lukla's approach look straightforward. Paro International Airport, VQPR, in Bhutan sits at 7,364 feet above sea level, surrounded by peaks reaching 18,000 feet. Only about 50 pilots on Earth are certified to land here. 50. Out of every commercial pilot flying today, a tiny fraction has the clearance to even attempt this approach. The requirements to earn that clearance are extraordinary. A pilot needs at least 1,500 total flight hours, more than 500 hours specifically in mountain flying, and an airline transport certificate. Then they must complete at least 30 supervised takeoffs and landings at Paro before they're allowed to operate independently. There's no radar, no instrument landing system. Pilots fly the approach entirely by visual reference, threading through a winding valley where the runway becomes visible only moments before touchdown. Aircraft lose up to 25% of their performance at this altitude due to density altitude effects in the thin air, while simultaneously needing higher ground speeds. Less lift, less stopping power, less time to react, with crosswinds adding another layer of complexity. When the very first commercial aircraft landed at Paro on January 14th, 1983, the exact time of landing, the number of passengers on board, and even the direction the aircraft was parked were all predetermined by the High Lama of Parodzong. Even the spiritual authorities understood that this airport demanded respect. Captain Chimi Dorji, a Drukare pilot with 25 years of experience at Paro, puts it simply. It's challenging and demands all of the pilot's skill, but it's not dangerous. If it were, I wouldn't be flying. From mountain valleys to ocean shores, Princess Juliana International Airport in St. Martin is probably the most photographed airport on the planet. The runway starts just 160 feet from the fence at Maho Beach, which means arriving aircraft on final approach pass directly over sunbathers at an altitude that looks impossibly low. It's become an Instagram sensation, with tourists lining up specifically to feel the rush of a 747 screaming overhead. But in July 2017, the spectacle turned fatal. A 57-year-old woman from New Zealand was killed when the jet blast from a departing aircraft threw her backward into concrete. It was believed to be the first death from jet blast at the airport, and it raised serious questions about whether authorities bear responsibility for allowing the public so close to active runway operations. Then there's an airport most people have never heard of, Juancho y Irausquin Airport, TNCS, on the island of Saba in the Caribbean, has the shortest commercial runway in the world, 400 meters. The usable length, accounting for obstacles at both ends, is just 1,263 feet. That's only 189 feet longer than the flight deck of the USS Enterprise, one of the largest aircraft carriers ever built. Cliffs drop into the sea at both ends of the runway, and hills rise sharply on one side. Winair operates as the sole airline serving this challenging strip, using specially configured aircraft. Here's the remarkable thing. According to the Aviation Safety Network, there has never been a single recorded accident at Saba since it opened on July 24, 1963. Not one. The runway even appears on one of the island's postage stamps, and the souvenir shop sells t-shirts reading "I survived the Saba landing." In the French Alps, Courchevel Altiport LFL serves the famous ski resort at an elevation of 6,588 feet. Its runway stretches 537 meters with an 18.66% gradient, making it the steepest paved runway in Europe. There's no go-around procedure, no instrument approach, no lighting aids. Wind shear from the surrounding peaks adds another hazard to an already challenging approach. French pilot Jean-Marie Urlacher warns, "Don't even begin an approach at Courchevel if there's a tailwind. Once you're committed, there's no possibility for a safe go-around. The terrain rises too steeply. We can't overlook Gibraltar, where until March 31, 2023, a 4-lane highway physically crossed the runway. Winston Churchill Avenue, the main road in and out of Gibraltar, intersected the airstrip, and traffic had to stop more than 15 times a day for aircraft movements. This had been the reality since 1941, and it took over 80 years to build a tunnel underneath. Or Madeira, now named after Cristiano Ronaldo, where a 1977 crash killed 131 people when a Boeing 727 overran the dangerously short 1,600-meter runway. What ties all of these airports together is this. Despite how terrifying they appear, commercial aviation has become extraordinarily safe. The fatal accident rate has dropped from 40 deaths per million flights in 1959 to just 0.05 per million flights in 2021. The pilots who operate at these airports aren't cowboys. They're among the most rigorously trained aviators in the world, flying into environments that demand absolute precision every single time. These runways exist because the communities they serve have no other viable option. Lukla is the gateway to Everest. Paro is the doorway to an entire nation. Saba is a tiny island that would be completely isolated without its impossible little runway. The danger isn't recklessness, it's necessity, met with extraordinary human skill.